wants to go? Like we have, so we have Mike Navicky from Mississippi State University and Doug Peterson from Oregon State University, who are going to be presenting. So Mike or Doug, who wants to go first?
I'm happy to kick it off.
Okay,
Um,
right.
well, cool. Hey, everybody. Mike Navicky, Mississippi State University, Director of High Performance Computing here in Starkville, Mississippi. Just going to talk about those four bullet points that Amit, I think, covered just our vision and planning, funding, strategies, partnerships, and initial and ongoing obstacles. Just a few minutes of discussion, and then really kind of, I think a lot of these things are very customizable. So looking for your questions. I will start off because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Um, so I'll start off with a video that kind of shows our progress on the building so far. So there we go. All right, that should be planned. You see the foundation. We put a camera up on a tower and kind of time lapsed it. You can see it kind of coming together. And I think it's actually kind of useful to maybe, I'm going to go back and pause a couple of the screens um, for us, just kind of talk through some of the design. So I don't know if you can notice, but it's on a pretty steep hill. So I don't know if you can see this here. And this is where you're starting to see, we'll call it somewhat of the basement. You can see these walls in the back right here, kind of developing. Then as you kind of see the floor go in there, and then you can see the roof and the second floor going up. The reason this is important is when I talk about the HPC design, we have 14-foot raised floors in there. And I'll talk about a couple of the trips that we made. But I think everyone here, if you work in a data center and it's HPC oriented, the advantages of having a full floor underneath your data hall, those advantages are obvious pretty quickly in regards to putting extra equipment down there, coolers, chillers, switching equipment, and then also just access to maintenance and the ease of maintenance to those things right there. And then as you kind of see it come together, it looks like a data center right there. And then eventually we put the brick and mortar on and make it look all super duper nice. In just a minute here we do anyway. There you go. So now it starts to look more like just a kind of a regular building we have around campus. And then one other kind of picture set that I wanted to share with everybody, just to kind of give you context. This is the location that we've chosen. So I don't know if you can see, oops, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Anyway, I think everybody can, I think it's probably good enough to see. If you look into this overhead, this circular area right here is the research park. And this Z-shaped building right here, that's the current HPC data center. So just kind of getting yourself kind of familiar with the landscape right there. Zooming in one more time. Again, this is our research park. We have our instrumentation lab over here. And then if you go across this big highway right here, that's where the campus is. So there is about a mile and a half between the campus and the research park. And again, you can see the proposed data center site at the time. You know, this was blank. And you can see this is where the current HPC center is. Another one of our laboratories, the Center for Advanced Vehicular Systems, and then kind of zoomed in again there. And again, as I kind of mentioned, there's a big hill and slope down here. So it's really nice is that you saw in that picture, when you drive up to it, it'll look like a one-story building. And then as you go around back, you have some loading docks and really kind of all the systems that you have to support it there. So let's see. I'm not sharing anymore, am I? No. Okay, cool. Well, great. So just that's a little bit of a description pictorially, and I think that's kind of useful to have sometimes. But I think obviously people are very interested in what was the vision that we had. So I think mostly, you know, Mississippi State has a 35-year history in high performance computing. Currently, we have very strong partnerships with NOAA and USDA. And we have we had two top 500 systems. One is 271 right now. We're doing an upgrade to another that'll double it to an 80,000 core system. And I expect that'll put it in the 270th range this November. on the top 500 list. And we do have a history of having top 500 systems before that as well. And the Orion system, when first purchased, was a 60th on the list. So a lot of experience, not just in the computation portion, but obviously the data center portion of that in regards to the cooling, the power, and just everything it takes to have a large system. So really kind of based on our relationship with USDA and NOAA and looking at some of that funding and regular recurring relationship, we looked at creating a data center specifically designed to host HPC because probably like most of the people in this call right now, we just have a whole bunch of old data centers that have been converted over best we can. So working with the state, working with the university, and identifying those sources and potentials, that's really where it kind of started to get pushed. We really cited our agricultural work and our automotive work in Mississippi. Right, we've got the Nissan plants. Obviously, we're an ag state, and then we also have like a very strong relationship with our defense. The U.S. Army being in Vicksburg with their supercomputing center, and then the U.S. Navy being on the coast at the Stennis and their supercomputing center. So as we kind of pressed forward, first things we talked about was like what were the impacts that HPC had already had on Mississippi. We had generated about $400 million in research funding over the last 10 years. With a 10-year investment by the university of $19 million. So very high return on investment. Then we also looked at the University of Illinois Petascale Computing Facility in 2007, attracted $240 million in development, $138 million in research, and a direct impact of economic impact of $1 billion. So really, haven't even talked much about computing yet when we're talking to the state. We're really talking about that that economic impact. And the same thing with NCAR in Wyoming in 2010, over $1 billion in investment. That data center in Cheyenne led to the establishment of a Microsoft data center with over a $1 billion in investment to date. So kind of convincing the people to do that. And again, I already mentioned strong relationship and economic support from NOAA. Each of the computers we have from NOAA right now were both $15.5 million. So substantial systems, and those come with operations budgets as well. That include the electricity bill, which is I think about $50,000 a month right now. So the data center. So the next big thing is that, hey, we need funding. And this kind of starts the first, I think, journey of some of the barriers that we had. Initially, it was funded to $30 million, and that was pre-COVID. Well, everybody knows what happened right around COVID, right? Costs, timelines, everything really expanded. So we had a substantial increase in cost. And so the Mississippi Development Authority, through the Industry Incentive Fund, provided $30 million initially, but then the state legislature ended up having to provide $11 million. And then the university had to come back and provide another $4 million to complete the construction of the facility. As I've already mentioned, it was designed specifically for high performance computing, high density computing, 2 megawatts per 1,000 square feet. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, 10,000 square feet of data hall space. Sorry. The facility will support HPC systems funded by MSU. Right now, we have 5 clusters, one supported by USDA, 2 by NOAA, and then 2 that are owned and operated solely by MSU. So obviously, we're going to do some of our own computation, but then we're looking obviously for our federal partners, NOAA and USDA, continued support. And then we're obviously, I would say, going out looking for industry support. I do always like to mention that we don't want to become an AWS. We're not looking to rent out data hall space. We're looking to use the data hall space to attract partnerships for our researchers. And I guess some people will be like, well, what if you can't find that? And yes, we're always willing to pay the bills and do what we got to do. But really trying to leverage this for local economic development, leverage this for our researchers here at Mississippi State University. The design was based on other high efficiency, high performance computing data centers. Thanks to NCAR, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, and NREL for hosting us on different trips. I wasn't able to attend all those. I don't know that any one person attended all 3 of those trips, but we got to go see data centers that were already very robust, very advanced, and really kind of take the best in breed of both of those as we designed our data center here in Starkville. The facility is going to be a 30,000 square foot facility, 2 stories, as I mentioned. 10,000 square feet of data hall space or raised floor, 12,500 feet of mechanical space, and a lot of that is going to be underneath and in addition to the data hall, and then 7,500 square feet of office space, meeting space. Planning on putting a knock in there and have talked about using that as a SOC as well. But that's a bigger discussion for the university as well. And then lots of flexibility for future and cooling design. It is expected to be a 20 megawatt facility, and the latest pictures I showed you are not quite the most up to date. We're expecting to be able to go in there and have it operational August of this year. So we're about 2 months away from opening the doors. I walked through there. We're literally putting up veneer on the walls, right? Making it look nice. Talking about furniture purchases. Initially, we have chiller and electrical for 5 megawatts, and we expect in the next 10 years to have that fully populated to provide that full 20 megawatts. Some of the barriers and challenges, right? So I think one of the barriers I mentioned already, very obvious one, COVID-19 delays. This was started before. I've only been at Mississippi State for about 4 years. This was started well before I was here, and I showed up in January of 21. So COVID was well underway. I think there were delays in the design, just for all the reasons at the time. Another thing that caused some delays is that brick and mortar relatively easy to put up. When we ordered some of the chillers, the switching gear, the generators, some of those items had 85-week lead times. And I've heard recently that there's some generators are like 120-week lead times. So you could build a brick and mortar building, but some of the really complex stuff, and it's really kind of back to I think some of the lead times have gone down for some of the bigger computers through Dell and HP, and I'd be interested to hear about experiences, but those obviously had super long lead times as well. And I mean, I think the longest lead time right now and stuff is power cords, power supplies. So you just never know what we're going to be short of. Some of the other challenges we're having is federal funding challenges with the current uncertainty. I said NOAA and USDA are one of our biggest partners and supporters. So obviously, they're kind of going through the churn that everybody's been watching in the news right now, and just prioritizing and determining their budgets. And that's just caused, I think, a little bit of delay, a little uncertainty, and just continued coordination with them is key. And then I think another kind of challenge that I haven't necessarily identified yet is that so the building is set up to have 20 megawatts. We worked with TVA and our local power to put a substation in back and actually very nicely behind the power, the data center to make it aesthetically pleasing, because we do have a very nice campus here. But we initially are starting off with one 750-ton chiller, which we expect to be about 5 megawatts worth of capacity. So if we do go beyond the 5 megawatts, and that's why I've talked about that 10-year timeline, is that those chillers are substantial in cost. So there's probably, to get to 20 megawatts right now, it'd probably be an additional $10 to $12 million of investment for additional switchgear and additional chiller capacity on the data center. So I think that's a pretty quick summary of what we've got here at Mississippi State. So I'll turn it over to Amit and let him either pass it to the next or questions, or I'm not sure the total format. Sorry.
No, it's free format. So if anyone has questions for Mike, feel free to unmute, or we can go to Dirk and then we can come back to questions.
Awesome. Then I'll take it from there, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Was this properly shared now? Yeah, I hope so.
Yep.
All right. So thank you for having me today. I'm Dirk Peterson. Here is my intro. I've been most of my time in life sciences at several research institutions, and now I'm in my first university job in higher ed in my life. I'm way beyond 50, so that's a new experience for me, and I like it so far. So Why are we here? I applied for a job at Oregon State last year when they announced that they were building a supercomputer after some alumni had been visiting the university. They left a large donation, and that caused some planning. And what can you buy for this donation? I think there were some ideas what was supposed to be purchased. Others chimed in and added more money. And so we built like this whole uh, complex. It's called the One Collaboration Complex, where we have like VR studio, reality studios, and all sorts of wonderful things. A cyber physical playground. So a lot of ideas have been generated about what to do with this. This is in the middle of our campus. And the data center is, this is a picture from like 10 minutes ago. The data center is only the small thing to the left, right? So you might think that the data center is the middle thing. No, it's the blue thing, because this computer is actually relatively small. So it's not like it doesn't require apparently a giant building. And so what are we getting for that, right? So in the original in the original, hang on one second. I am on the wrong slide deck here. Am I? No, I'm good. Okay, so no, I'm on the wrong slide deck. I am on the wrong slide deck. I had been putting it together and merged it. Apologies. So let me put this up. Here we are. So when you're talking, obviously, we are probably doing GPUs, as you could have imagined. And most of you will probably not buy something like this, right? Because a DGX box is about 50% more expensive than putting GPUs in any like super micro machine that you can just buy. And that's what probably most people are doing. We have so far decided that we have like 10 of these spread around campus. And that was because of our long relationship with NVIDIA, I believe, right? I'm not entirely sure why. But so we are very much into DGX, but in the future,
Dirk,
we have come to the conclusion, and interrupt me anytime you have a
Dirk,
question.
did you intend to start sharing again?
Oh, sorry. I did, and thank you for the interruption. All right, here we go. I thought I had shared it, but I didn't. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here we are. So this machine is something that is something that some of you are familiar with, but it's mostly not purchased for supercomputing setups, right? That's what I wanted to say. And so when we were looking at going to the next level, NVIDIA seems to be promoting these new infrastructures where they want to go to like an entire, they want to sell by the data center if you want. And the first step towards that sell by the data center strategy is selling by rack. And this is, some of you might have seen this. This is like the new NVL 72 and NVL 144 infrastructure, where you basically have like one node. It's actually like, if you want, it's 18 nodes in one rack, but you can address them as a single node in a single NVLink domain, where you have basically 144 GPUs that you can automatically address by a large language model or whatever you want to do with that. The big thing that I think was holding people back is that it's an ARM CPU, right? So we spoke with several other universities and other providers who said they were going with the traditional DGX architecture, which was like an Intel x86 architecture. And since we have a bit of a green field, right, our AI footprint is relatively small in general. GPUs, we have a lot of GPU use, but not a lot of AI use today. So we said that would be a relatively clean break for us from the past, and we could really, jump into the new ARM CPU, which seems to be the future anyway. Right? If we're looking at the reasons why they actually do that, we found out that NVIDIA is kind of bound to Intel right now because in order to work with AMD, they would have to share their roadmap details much more deeply. And AMD is a competitor of NVIDIA in the GPU market, so their only choice was using Intel. But the Intel performance has been somewhat lacking behind AMD for a while now. So that kind of pushed them probably also to say let's just use ARM because the performance is already reaching of what Intel can do today, right? And we can very much optimize it. So in a sense, like you have a single board and there's like two GPUs, which are the eyes, and then the CPU, which is the nose in this picture. Right, and so I'm not a tech guy originally, so I'm kind of a little bit lax in my expression here, right? And so that seemed to be a good option. Looking at some research about the benchmarks, we do see that yeah, AMD has a lot of performance, but the Grace super chip, the CPU, is actually quite fast and quite competitive in many benchmarks. And of course, they chose the one where the super chip shines here, right? It's an NVIDIA benchmark, so it's not the reality of the world, but overall, I could say that the Grace CPU is about on a per core performance similar to what Intel delivers today. Right. And so we have a lot of like water cooling issues that we need to solve that we haven't solved that yet. And then our electricity is not great, right? We heard of 20 megawatts. We're far from that. We are at 2 megawatts right now, and next year one rack is like 600 kilowatt, right? So we're going to buy like 3 racks, I think, and that's going to use up all of our power, which turns out to be in the location where we are. We don't really have very inexpensive power. So it's definitely, I think the power budget is going to be exceeding 1 million a year here. So that's definitely a significant challenge for us. Um, so from a user perspective, we have this like mission prosperity widely shared. So we said yes, we want to have OSU users in a certain like priority setting, but we also want to open this up almost equally to Oregon University, and I think implicitly also to everybody else who wants to use it. The funding challenges are of course immense in the future, right? If we have to replace this infrastructure in 5 years, then that means that we'll be probably looking at another donation or another external funding. I don't think that we can recover this with user fees alone. And also, it's beyond the means of a university. Like Oregon State is not a tiny university, but it's also not a giant university, right? So we established that we're about a third of the budget of Utah, right? So that has to it has to be some level setting there. So that's I have a goal to really work hard on onboarding of external users. We have like currently an initiative in Oregon of a co-managed instance where we can align the UID, GID spaces so that external users can like just log in very quickly using even their own UID, GID paradigms. That's underway, but it's of course not a solution for everybody. So I'm looking at the whole like set of like quick logins of cyber infrastructures. I'm not necessarily a person who's worked at a supercomputing center, but I have made several experiences at a larger supercomputing centers, and I didn't find the login approach, like getting onto their system, very easy and straightforward, right? And so I hope that I can, despite all the integration and that's already there and all the wonderful cyber infrastructure that is there, I wasn't able to get on like with my normal average user skills very quickly. And I hope I can work on improving that a little bit. I have a little bit about data storage that I probably also want to share, which is a little bit less, which is like different what most of you have been doing. So maybe it's worth sharing. Before I go there, does anybody have any questions about this?
Dirk, it's Mike Navicky. So when you talk about Oregon University and other U.S. universities using the system, are you talking about like a fee for charge or a fee for use, or are you talking about some sort of like collaboration with researchers? How do you anticipate people getting access?
At this point, we everybody will pay, right? So even the internal users will pay. We believe that in the first year, the system will be so unique because we are getting probably one of the first Rubin level GPUs in the world, that people will be very interested in using it. In subsequent years, I think collaborations will be probably much more, will be creeping up if you want, right? So I think that that will also play a role. The short story is we haven't made a decision on that. Again, we believe that a third needs to be recovered from user fee. Maybe a third will be paid for by the university, and a third or more must come in from donations. But that has not been like fully formalized yet. But we want to make it open. We want to open it up. And I believe that if we have two or three phenomenal use cases, right? So if somebody comes and say, if I use this machine, I will be accomplishing this breakthrough, and it will be so phenomenal that Jensen Huang will actually talk about it in one of his keynotes, right? And then I will say, you can assume that you will get access to the system. If
Oh
it's a
no,
keynote,
that's yeah, I totally understand. That's where you get the third of donation if you've got that
yeah,
really cool science. No,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
thanks.
So I'm sorry I can't be more precise right now, but that's the general idea, right? And I think it's an idea that is probably in line with what most of you would also be doing and thinking. Okay. Um, I want to talk a little bit about maybe 5 minutes about data storage. Um, I want to prefix that by my personal experience, and that's, we've had a lot of discussions about this. I've had a personal experience with with Lustre, with a commercial implementation of Lustre, and it hasn't gone well. And one of the reasons was that we might not have the staff to actually run this appropriately. So I think your mileage may be completely different, but for me, it is at this point not acceptable to run a Lustre system, right? So I want to, because of like we had like week-long outages with it, and I didn't want to have that again. So we looked elsewhere, and so from a storage problem, it's like basically the forever problem, right? You can have a cheap, fast, reliable, right? But you can't really have all three of them, right? It's very hard to do that. There's a bunch of features that are floating around, but storage is essentially always going to be a compromise in whatever way. And so we said, what can we do there? We looked at the open source parallel file systems. I've been I've been traumatized by BGFS, which I've been running for a while. I've been traumatized by Lustre, not yet by Ceph, but maybe that's going to come. I don't know. Then there's a bunch of emerging solutions that are in a certain price range, right? And then enterprise is for most of us unaffordable, right? That's not in the possibility of our realm. And then there's like these high-end flash systems that are AI specific, right? So NVIDIA basically promotes like three storage vendors. That's Weka, that's VAST, and it's DDN all-flash systems. And there's a new DDN Infinia that's also coming up. That's actually quite exciting. I think seems to be a great product. But it's not the traditional exascaler that they have been using for a long time. So what we have been doing is, and that I started this journey at OHSU, my previous employer, where we have this right now in production at a 5, 6, 7 petabyte range. We are going to do the same thing here at a 10 to 15 petabyte range now. So basically, the idea is to put a Weka system that's very expensive, an all-flash system in front of an S3 object store where you can use like many products. In this case, we decided that we want to use Ceph. I also think that there is Scality is an awesome product as well, in my opinion. But they were kind of head to head. And with the economics that we are able to achieve there, the Weka being very expensive, but only necessary for like 10% of your storage, and the Ceph being quite inexpensive, we are able to get to like somewhere like $4, maybe $5, maybe $3, so about an average $4 per terabyte per month, and that's like 48 per year, and that's actually below what a lot of DDN Luster systems can actually deliver today, right? And I think this system has a one giant weakness. It's a two vendor finger pointing situation where you have like one vendor saying, the other thing is bad, and it's not our fault. However, these systems have been in production for a very long time, and Weka is very familiar with working with third-party tools, right? Unlike other vendors who come into the market right now, who basically offer uh, like S3 access as a complementary solution. And if that fails, then they are probably very quick to say, yeah, you should have bought our disks. But Weka is really doing this for like now, I don't know, almost 10 years. So from that perspective, I have more confidence there. And we have really excellent results in our production deployment at OHSU. I was more impressed after the deployment than I was before, because I had a bunch of like reservations about certain corner cases. But it seems to work really, really, really well. And so that's why we're doing the same thing here, right? And we are achieving, quite a lot of benefits. We can actually offer with two different solutions or two different systems, which is just white boxes, super micro boxes, all. We can actually achieve multiple storage tiers. We can do like a deep, very cheap S3. We can also do CephFS. CephFS is a little bit uh, questionable still, right? In the sense that it might not have the performance that you want. But then you can also say, okay, let's use Weka IO in front of it. It's like twice the price, but it's well worth it for me. And twice the price is still very cheap, right? So you can go from the range of ultra cheap to cheap. And if you don't like to maintain a Ceph cluster yourself, you can ask several European companies, such as Croy, to actually you have a custom distribution, you deploy that. And you can also have a fully managed service for not too much money, where you actually don't have to manage your Ceph at all, right? You just give it away to somebody else, and it's not like as expensive as you might think to handle that. And so the deployment here has been not done by a storage engineer; it's been done by the HPC engineer. So there are no more storage engineers at OHSU, right? Storage specific people are no longer required for this, because it's all like Linux servers that run. There's some software on top of them, and that's basically what the HPC engineers do. So that's what I had. Thank you very much. And that's the graph here, like very simple. Also, I should say it's a multi-data center deployment. I forgot to mention that. So we have a lot of resiliency because we can actually span the Ceph cluster across like 4 to 5 data centers. And if one of them goes down, the whole system just continues without interruption, which is really great. Which completely like changes our whole like risk perspective on not having data backed up, right? Before that, you would always say, oh, for critical data, I need some backup, I need some co-location. And now, it would have to be a major disaster, like a comet or nuclear weapon or like massive flood kind of thing, that like multiple of our data centers burn down or get flooded. That's a very unusual event. So we feel quite confident about that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dirk, and thanks, Mike, for giving us a glimpse of how you are planning for your infrastructure. So I'll get started with the questions, and others can start thinking about what questions they might have. So my first question was like, what advice would you give institutions that are like just thinking about planning their next phase of expansion, or just starting to plan for infrastructure from scratch?
Um, Amit, I would just offer up, one of the other challenge I didn't necessarily identify, right? So 10,000 square feet of data hall space and 20 megawatts of power. If you're just sitting around and thinking like, well, how much computation are you going to need? Or how much money would you need to hit the limits of your space and your power consumption? And I'm roughly saying 100 to 125 million dollars. Like we would need to put 125 million dollars of computational capacity in there to tap out the power. And the reason I say that, right? I mean, this is a valuable asset. There's been a lot of investment by the state, so you want to maximize the compute and like you want to maximize the space. You want to maximize utilization of the compute. So the first thing I would do is that sometimes I think these data centers seem like they are a good idea, but you might consider looking for a partner within your state, right? So if you're Oregon University, certainly look towards Oregon State. This year, for the past 2 years in Mississippi, we've had a statewide conference for high performance computing. We have three other schools, R1, R2 institutes, Southern Miss, Jackson State, and Ole Miss. We're really looking at partnering with them, and not to sound like a fanboy, but like when you look at the research computing data capabilities model is, we could really, as Mississippi State University, be kind of the center of the facilities and the systems there. But there's a lot of needed people and talent needed in the researcher facing, the data facing, the software facing. So I would say look for partnerships in which maybe you could be more heavily engaged in the researcher facing or the data facing or the software facings of the RCD capabilities model, and then maybe another institute that's already strong and has capabilities in the facilities slash systems area. So yeah, partnership is going to be key, I think, with these data centers. And data centers might not be the right call for everyone. Looking for that partnership might be.
I fully agree. I fully agree. But there's another element to the partnership, right? I mean, I think we will, at least in the AI space, we will be ultimately power bound, and we are power bound today. And that means that nothing else really matters but how you get the power, right? And if you have a lot of power uh, reserves, right, what are you going to do with it, right? Are you going to selling? How can you leverage that, right? Can you develop partnerships with others so that you can maximize your power footprint? Are you going to leave your power unused for 5, 10 years? Where elsewhere, people are scrambling for it. Can you offer, hey, bring your systems. You get like a sealed off data center space. We have that. You can host it here. I have the power. Our power is inexpensive. How can you collaborate with others to maximize that footprint, right? That's what I would think about, right? Because every penny counts in supercomputing, and so that would be my first inclination.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience? I think there's a question in the chat. Question about the Ceph mini data center deployment. Is there a data replication across the three data centers?
Yes, it's not a replication, it's an erasure coding setup. So you can set up like something like an 8+4 or 7+5 erasure coding that has about 30% overhead, and you're spreading all of that across multiple data centers, like 4 data centers at least, right? And so you can actually, I'm kind of like uh, turning a weakness into a strength, right? So our university has, I think, 6 data centers, and besides this big one that we are now building, and we're not proud of that because all of them are, or none of them are really well maintained, right? And so you see that with a lot of universities all over the place, right? You build another closet and turn it into a data center. But in this case, it can actually work in our favor, right? Because the data centers are spread across campus, and provide a very great way of laying the foundation of this data storage infrastructure.
Thanks. Gregory, do you have follow-up for that? I see you. Okay. If you have questions, feel free to just unmute and ask. You don't have to paste them in the chat, but since there are a couple of more questions in the chat, I'll just read it out loud. Or
Yeah,
Kang, if you
one of the challenges is the DR, and I think that's what the question was getting at is disaster recovery. No one wants to pay for 3 copies of the data, 2 on-site, 1 off-site. It's just too expensive. And so most researchers will take the risk that they'll trust that the RAID works or the erasure encoding works.
I mean, I think some of your backup, you can have really cost-effective backups as long as you're willing to, I think, return the value in time, right? We use Versity here, and we've got now we are that is funded partly by one of our federal partners, but yeah, we use tape backups, LTO9, and I think that's a pretty cost-effective, right? I don't think it's a huge price tag.
Yeah, it is. I agree with that. A tape at scale is the most cost-effective thing. And if you can't do scale, then and if you can't do math very well, then it turns out to be sometimes a very costly thing as well. Right? So tape requires some level of skill that I don't have at this time.
So Bill Barnett, I see your question out there for increasing power needs. So it's funny you mentioned that because I literally just collaborating with the University of Alabama, got to visit their data center. So the data center that we're building here in Starkville is being just about mirrored in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and they were talking about their access to water. They're right next to Lake Tuscaloosa, and I'm sure you've seen in the news, Elon Musk's data center in Memphis. There's a lot of discussion about the water access there and them tapping into the aquifer. I would say that locality will certainly play a part. And the reason I say that is in Tuscaloosa, they have Lake Tuscaloosa. The Alabama had to work with the city and the county there to get a letter saying that, hey, here's how much water that we would be using. Here's how much would be supplied by Lake Tuscaloosa. And in Tuscaloosa, not a problem. Plenty of water to be had. But if you get to a place where maybe the water is a limiting factor and you're competing with other non-data center needs that seem more priority, then I agree. I think locality will play a part in the data centers in the near future.
I was just a quick follow-up. I was just thinking about kind of a longer term thing, and there's the massive amounts of investment that corporations are making in these huge data centers for AI. Is just like, is that going to be, is that just that scale just going to be something that HPC centers are going to be looking at that and saying maybe that's our future too, because we just have to get on board with the scale. I was actually listening to the Senate testimony on AI with Sam Altman and all those folks. And they were saying power, it's all going to be about power. And so it is, I was just, to Dirk's comment about being power bound, is that we start thinking 5 years, 10 years out, is that what we have to think about for our future of where we put our HPC assets?
I mean, yeah, so I'm just trying to think, it was a couple years ago I read where it was talking about what I think by 2030, 10% or 13% of all the world's power would be consumed by HPC centers. I don't know that I have a perfect answer for you right now because I'm really kind of thinking it out loud and talking to you, but I would say it might be going that direction. And I think if you look at the various different services, right? I mean, nobody has their own email services on campus anymore. Those are all in the cloud. And I think everybody's continuing to look at, research institutes do things that are special. We don't just do commodities for the fun of commodities. So, what is going to be research computing and what is going to be commodity computing? And I think in some cases there's a lot of commodities out there in regards to parallel computing. So, yeah, not a perfect answer and really kind of thinking out loud. So I'll throw it to Dirk, see if he's got anything or anybody else.
Yeah, we don't know what will be in many years. We don't know what also like the traditional HPC will still be. I think that the HPC power use of CPUs, not GPUs, right? If you want like the traditional part that still 80% of our researchers are using, if we're honest, right? So the bread and butter is continuing to be CPU utilization. And that is a little bit in the, what do you call that, in the wind shadow of the AI. right? We're building our power capability. So I'm not really worried about that being a problem anymore because there's so much of a bigger problem there, right? So that's probably the good news. If you have an exabyte of data storage now, the power bill for that is minuscule compared to what a GPU system will take. So from that perspective, that's all good and will continue.
Yeah, I did read somewhere that Microsoft is building, no, not Microsoft. I think was that I forget now, but someone's building a nuclear power plant right next to the data center, so to have power immediately available. So a lot of interesting things happening. So there's one more question in the chat. Question for Mike and Dirk from Kang. Kang, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Khan from North Dakota State University. So my question about a coolant bar. So I don't know if you had some more information to share about. I mean, for example, at Oregon State, you have very fancy system and rack level coolant may not be suitable. So are you thinking about direct liquid coolant? The same question for Mississippi State University. So what are you doing over here regarding coolant? And another thing is, it's not the same as rack level coolant. It seems that it costs a lot more. So if you have something to share about it, it would be great. Thank you.
I can chime in very quickly. I mean, for us, it's very easy. We are buying industry off-the-shelf solutions with these racks. Cooling is already built in. So it's you can't buy without liquid cooling, but you have to get a lot of water pipes in, right? And you have to worry about what happens if a pipe breaks to your $25 million equipment and all of this. This is still relevant, but the cooling part is really off the shelf right now, and it's I wouldn't call it a solved problem, but it's near solved.
Yeah. I think Dirk said he summarized it perfectly. We have three of our five systems are air cooled. One has rear door heat exchangers. The other has direct liquid cooling and rear door heat exchangers. All commercial off the shelf, maintenance contracts in place.
So in that case, how do you handle maintenance? Normally our system admin, would go into the data center, if something wrong, we, you know, the traditional way of doing things, right? You can remove a certain node, you can remove certain cable, you can open something up, right? But now with direct liquid cooling,
Hong,
how
are
do
you
you deal with it?
are you possibly maybe referring to immersion liquid cooling? Because for us, the nodes are individually connected, so and the rear door heat exchangers each open up have a connection as well. So yeah, the commercial like for the rear door heat exchangers and the direct liquid cooling in regards to you're pumping water over the processor, but not necessarily immersing it in the liquid. That's the cooling that we're using, and those are all very well set up for maintenance. If it's immersion, I have no experience with the kind of the immersion where you're dunking the whole thing in there.
Yeah, I'm thinking more about, you have a unit on top of the CPU or GPU.
Okay, yeah,
Which
yeah.
is
Yes.
exactly what you're talking about.
Got
Yes.
it. We have that as well. I am not the expert of it, but if you want to contact our very Chris Sullivan, he has it in his data center and he loves it. And I sense a little bit concern when you talk about this. And I think that there is not a unanimous opinion on this technology. So Chris loves it because it allows him to expand the capability of his data center very, very rapidly and easily and very inexpensive, right? It's great. However, you have to open up your chassis, right? And a lot of us are not, I mean, we are not doing that necessarily. What we do is flipping drives, right? We don't open up a chassis that we buy, right? That's not what we do, right? And so some people, it really depends. If you are a screwdriver kind of person in the data center, if a Phillips driver is hanging out of your pocket, then you will have no problem with that, and all the rest of us will be slightly afraid, right? And so,
Yeah,
I
exactly what my
truly would stand by
concern.
him.
Right, that's exactly my concern because now,
Yeah.
if I had a coolant unit, something happened, I had to call the contractor or someone because I couldn't dare to touch it. Right?
I mean, Yeah,
Right.
the third-party solutions, right? They might be voiding the warranty, right? So
Right.
so eventually you want to have something that is offered by one vendor, right? That makes
Right.
most sense. And that's the same reason why people don't buy like a Weka Ceph solution because they're afraid that it doesn't work together. So they want to have a single vendor solution, right? And that's the same argument there.
Right. So I mean, right now we had rack level coolant, but yet even with the best coolant dollar we can get, we can only populate the rack like about half of it, because
Yeah.
otherwise go beyond the coolant capacity. So we have to do something about direct liquid coolant at some point. So,
I would contact Chris, and
okay.
he will convince you. I think he will.
Okay.
He's a glowing supporter of the solution.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Any last minute questions? We have about 2 minutes left. See, there was a question in the chat by Julie asking about uh, how are people sharing their potential cost structure, like one-third user, one-third central. So anyone has any thoughts on that? Like anyone want to share more info on that?
Are you talking? You said shared cost?
Yeah, cost,
Yeah.
like who's paying for it?
Right. We're implementing a condo model. So the first system, we bought a 100 node CPU based system. Each node has two 32 core AMD processors with 256 gigs of RAM, and we're just offering those nodes up for a 5-year contract. Right. So somebody pays $25,000 per node. They get facilitator support, a limited amount of facilitator support, getting you up and running on your first job. You get all the sysadmin support. There's a standard software stack. That's kind of our first foray, or first kind of into that type of funding scenario. Previously, we get a portion of the NOAA computers, and really mostly through grants, and those types of funding. So
Yeah, I think that's pretty standard, right? And I've shared just the price list of our friends from University of Florida, which they have the biggest AI machine right now, and they share this, and it's very standard, and the pricing are very comparable, I think, to what we're also heading for.
All right, perfect. All right, thanks everyone for joining the call. Thanks, Mike, Dirk, for sharing your experiences. I hope everyone had we had a great discussion and everyone learned something from the delightful people here.
thank you,
Awesome.
Amit.
Yeah,
That was
thanks both
fun.
of you for joining.
Thanks for joining. I'll see you in July 2nd.
Awesome.